So if you guys can go to this site and answer the question as best you see fit. Huh? Go to Mentimeter. It's going to come up in a second. At the bottom, at the top. It's black for a second, so just give us a second. Huh? And then we can discuss afterwards. The code is coming up. Have some patience. One of the things. It's yeah. I don't understand. No, this internet's really slow. Let me get it. Because it's not giving you the code, hey? One sec. Okay, the code is 1757 810. All right, slowly. 1757 8105. Sorry, it's supposed to come up on this, but it just doesn't. I don't know why. 8105. Sorry, it's supposed to come up on here, but it just doesn't. Huh? Now OJP. I'm gonna have to call security on you, man. One seven five seven 8105. 5. Okay, so did you get asked the question? 1757 هبعتها لك 8105 5. And just answer the question as you see fit. Jonas, do you want to do it? You don't have a phone? Top here. So, did you guys all get it? Are you guys in? Are you answering? It's one question. Yeah. And we can, because we can discuss it at the end. I'll try and get it for you. Eight 8105. Sorry, it's supposed to come up on the screen. It comes up on my screen. I don't know why it doesn't come up on this, on my phone, but whatever. Anyway, so yeah, just try and answer the question as best you can. And we'll come back to this and we'll discuss it afterwards. Your answers should show up, ideally. Has anyone answered it yet? Okay, they should show up, so obviously it's not working too well today. There we go. Okay. Oh, nice. All right. So we've got some good answers. Huh? Rich. That's great. We've got honesty, loyalty, love, faithfulness, trust, reliance, loyal, respect, considerate, sound advice. I like how you made that one word. Brutal honesty. That's also one word. Yeah. Rich. That's a good one. Yeah. That's my favorite. Rich. All right. So keep that in mind. We're going to come back to this, and we'll discuss it afterwards. And then, yeah, we'll discuss it afterwards, and everyone can share their opinion. Because like I said, I think this topic in particular, being a good friend, the others were, I feel like, other topics were a little bit more straightforward, but this one, everyone has their own idea of what a good friend is. And so everyone differs in their opinion of this. So I'm going to share a little bit of an opinion, my personal opinion, as well as an opinion that I've found. All right. So let's start with the PowerPoint. All right. So now friendship is something that, as we can all agree, it's not black and white. Yeah. So it's something that it differs from person to person. It differs from friendship to friendship, from relationship to relationship, and there's many different interactions that we can have with people. And so it's definitely not something that we can sort of classify as black and white. We can say this is what a friend is and this is not what a friend is, right? Definitely different shades of grey. But in a way, I'm going to try and make this as black and white as I possibly can, so that we can kind of get a foundation or a ground on what it means to be a friend. All right. So when we look, if you actually type what it means to be a good friend online on Google, you get a whole list of things that some of them are relevant, some of them aren't. Some of them are just really just being polite to the people around you. One of them was just be a good listener, which, okay, fair enough, but you're a good listener with everyone around you. So essentially it was just a lot of them were just a list of how to be polite to the people around you. And we see the idea of good friends everywhere though. If you watch all these different TV shows, all these different movies, I feel like something like Disney has the best idea of good friends. It's always has a very good character list, and they always have good relationships and everything. And we can also see a lot of good friendships in the Bible, right? We heard last week, David and Jonathan, a very good close friendship. We have Elijah and Elisha, Moses and Aaron, even though they're brothers, they were very close friends. We have St. Paul and St. Timothy, all the disciples with each other. But I think one that we definitely don't dwell on, but we know a lot about, is actually the friendship between Christ and the disciples. How do I make this full screen, by the way? You can't? I'm trying to, man. Because I'm just a bad friend. Is there a button? You have to save a copy. It's all right. It's all right. Marlene, I'll continue. So if we look at John chapter 15, verses 12 to 15, Christ clearly says to the disciples, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do whatever I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for servants do not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you." So clearly here Christ is saying to his disciples, you are my friends. Yeah, and I bolded the word friends and the word love because I think both those two words have really lost their value in the English language. I think we can say the word love in general for a lot of things, and it doesn't really mean the love that he's referring to here. And we can say the word friends to pretty much anyone around us. Even when you're making an important statement, you might say to somebody, my friend, listen to me, and it might not be somebody that you know at all. So those words have really lost a lot of value in the English language. And whereas Christ, the way he's referring to them here, actually puts a lot of weight on them, right? He's saying to them, you are my friends, if you do whatever I command you. And greater love has no one than to lay down his life for his friends. So if we actually look at the origin of this, and we take a step back and look at that actual, what he meant by those words. So in the Greek language, those words, friends and love, actually translate. So friend is the word philia, and the word love is the word agape. So some of you may know that word, you might have heard it in the Coptic, is agape, right? And they are essentially what are referred to in the Greek language as different types of love, right? So in the Greek language, there's actually 4 different types of love. And so they're all described in this book by C.S. Lewis. It's called The Four Loves. If you guys ever get the chance to read it, it's very nice. And it has a whole chapter that talks about friendship and the importance of friendship. And actually talks a lot about how friendship is very important, not only for our well-being and our self-esteem, but for like just general functioning of ourselves and society as well. So it's very, very good and in-depth about it. Of course, it's written in the typical C.S. Lewis style, so you have to be very much a fan of the way he writes. But he breaks those 4 types of love up, and he talks about each one of them individually. So the 4 types of love are, as is written up there, you've got eros, which is like the partner love. You've got philia, which is also called friendship. You've got, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but I would say storge, which is affection. And then you've got agape, which is charity. So philia is the type of love that Christ is referring to. Affection refers to like the love between, like a familial love, like the love between a mother and a child, right? And agape refers to the love that God has for us and the love that we have for him in return. So when he describes these 4 types of loves, he breaks them up into natural types of love and divine or unnatural types of love. So when he says natural, he's essentially saying those first 3 types of love are love that you will feel for the people around you, or like the forms of connections that you will have with people around you, maybe not so much by any effort that you're putting in. For example, a mother doesn't necessarily have to be told to love their child, right? They don't really have to put in too much effort. It's sort of something that comes to them naturally. And he's saying friendship is the same thing. Friendship is something that you experience naturally to the people around you. You form a connection with somebody over similarities, whether it's like similarities in personality, similarities in opinion. It could be you live close to them, so you start becoming friends with them, right? But he says agape love is different in that it is a love that actually requires active work from us. We have to actually put in a lot of work to be able to express agape love to those around us and to express that love to God. So the reason I'm mentioning this, so he says this about friendship. He says in the book, he says, to the ancients, friendship seemed to be the happiest and most fullest and the most fully human of all loves, the crown of life and the school of virtue. The modern world in comparison ignores it. We admit, of course, that besides a wife and kids, a man needs a few friends, but the very tone of the admission and the sort of acquaintances which those who make it will describe as friendship show clearly that what they are talking about has very little to do with that philia which Aristotle classified among the virtues. It is something quite marginal, not a main course in life's banquet, a diversion, something that fills up the chinks of time. How has this come about? So essentially he's saying friendship nowadays is undervalued. It's just, again, because the word has lost its value, it's something that we kind of all just pass by. We can be friends with anyone and everyone around us. And he continues to say it is a relationship both between men at the highest level of individuality. It withdraws men from collective togetherness as surely as solitude itself could do. To say these are my friends implies these are not. So he's essentially saying there is some exclusivity behind friendship, right? He's saying that like some people will hold that title of friendship, of friend, and everyone else that isn't isn't very close to you, in his the old definition of it was essentially not defined as your friend, right? And that makes it very much more important, the term friend and friendship, right? Because if you're only having a few people that you determine or you define as your friends, then you're putting a lot more value on them and more importance on them, right? And the reason I'm saying this is because that's what Christ was referring to when he said, you are my friends, right? So if we look at the way he describes it, C.S. Lewis, he says in the book that all these types of love, the 3 types of love, the 4 types of love that I was referring to, of the 3 natural types of love that we have, it's very easy to show the first 3 because they're very natural to us. But at the same time, when we show the first 3, it only gets us to a certain point in that relationship, right? And in order to further that relationship, in order to perfect that relationship or try to grow that relationship, we have to put in our own version of agape love into there, right? So we have to actually actively put in effort and try to insert this other form of love into that relationship in order to flourish that relationship, right? So then using that, it becomes a lot more black and white. When we're thinking about friendship, then we can think about friendship is a connection that you have with an individual, and once we start practicing that agape love towards that individual, then we are able to further that relationship. We're able to actually get much closer to that relationship, much further in that relationship, and we're able to actually get much closer to that person in that friendship, right? So that makes it a lot more black and white, and then it just means that, well, we have to understand what agape love is in order to be able to practice it in our friendships. So yeah, if you guys have heard of this, you would know the definition. Can I zoom in? Yeah, there we go. So it's described as the highest form of love. Selfless, sacrificial, unconditional love, persists no matter the circumstance, always giving, and devotes total commitment to seek the highest and the best. So it pretty much fits some of the definitions that we have for a good friend, essentially. So it's described firstly as, it's described as unconditional. So if we're applying that into friendship, then that means unconditional. We have to be unconditional towards our friends. So we have to be sort of looking to always support our friends at all times, through the good and the bad, through the moments where everything is working out and through the moments where everything is very tough. And we've all met these types of people, the type of people that I like to refer to as like the good time friends. And the good time friends, they'll come around when everything is good, and you'll be very close, and you'll form like a good relationship. And then the moment something happens that is difficult in your life, like whatever it may be, whether if it's like at uni, you're at uni and you have to study for exams and the stress of exams, or like, you're at work and something difficult happens at work or something happens with your family situation, these people disappear, right? And you just don't hear from them at all. And then eventually when things go back to normal, then you start to see them again. So that's a very good example of a conditional relationship. These friends, the condition of their friendship is that you're in a good position, that you're going to have a good time, right? And I think it's hardest to try and be unconditional towards the people around us, especially when we're having a dispute with them, right? So when we're arguing with them, or like we're not on good terms, or something has happened to make the friendship a little bit awkward, that's the time when it's most important to be unconditional towards them. Because that's the time when it is hardest, and that's the time when we have to be unconditional towards them in order to show our friendship. So a good example is the one that Beck gave with Job. If you read the book of Job, the first 35 chapters, or like 40 chapters of the book of Job, is just Job arguing with 3 of his friends. It's literally just him going back and forth with his friends, and they're telling him, you're unrighteous, and God is wrathful. And he's like, no, I'm righteous, and God is righteous, and this has happened because of something else, because this is Satan. And it's just a back and forth argument, and it gets to the point where they get kind of really rude with each other. And it eventually ends when God intervenes and he starts speaking to Job. And then the final chapter, it says, that's when it says, Job says to them, Job actually says, he prays for his friends. And it says, God restores all Job's losses when he prays for his friends. So even though, despite all the things that they said to him and about him, calling him unrighteous and trying to put him down and trying to actually make him fall into sin, he still turns around and prays for them. Yeah? So he showed his ability to be unconditional towards his friends, and that's when he was actually blessed. Now, there is an exception to this, and the only exception to always being unconditional to those around us is if those around us are actively trying to pull us away from God, if they're actively trying to hinder our salvation. And I say actively because if, like, some people, they may do it without knowing, passively. They might not know you very well, and so it's in their nature. But I think as you build a relationship with the people around you, you should respect each other enough to be able to respect their beliefs, and they should do the same to you. So if you don't have that relationship where they respect you and you respect their beliefs, then they may try to actively pull you away from God. And what I mean is, like, if you have that relationship of respect, as in to say, you know, they know that Sunday you go to church, so they're going to be like, let's not make you stay out late on a Saturday night because you go to church on Sunday, for example. So things like that, like they'll know what your beliefs are and they'll respect your beliefs. But if they're trying to actively pull you away from God, or they're trying to actively pull you away from salvation, that's a different story, because that's the only time when we can kind of be selfish to look for ways to sort of protect ourselves. All right? And that kind of counteracts what I was about to say next, which is sacrificial or selfless. So it's sacrificial towards the people around us. So I think that's the staple of just any type of love in general, being sacrificial. How much time or effort you're willing to put in to either to help out, to further the relationship, to try and work hard at building that connection. I think it was someone that said last week that time is like a currency that we've been given by God, and so how we spend that currency is very important. So if we really do care about furthering that relationship with our friend, then we will be freely able to give of that currency. Yeah, we'll be happy to give of that currency. Again, all these things are easier said than done, but we'll try to make it as black and white as we can, so we can essentially, so we can try and work towards those things. And then the last one is, as described there, is seeks the best. So seeks the best for my friends, seeks the best for the people around. So what is the best for the people around? It's a lot of things, right? Yeah. You want to say something, but you just like hesitant. Yeah, that's all right. I won't push you. It's like it's everything. Seeks the best. You want your friends to be happy, right? You want them to be successful. You want them to have good relationships with their friends and their family, and you want to see them flourish, right? And most importantly, obviously, we want to see them on the right path to salvation. Ideally, if we're seeking the best for our friends and for those around us, we want to see them moving or in the right direction towards salvation, because that is the best. That's the purpose we're here on earth, right? To try and further our relationship with God and to try and get as close as we can to God. So ideally, we want to be trying to push our friends towards that as well, right? In any way we can. So those are the main characteristics of a Rebbe love that I feel like he mentions that are important to insert into the relationship to try and further that relationship, right? Now, if we look beyond that, then there's a list of things that are also mentioned as things that we have to try and remove in order to prevent the relationship from like deteriorating, or prevent our friendship from actually not progressing. So, as with anything, there's withouts, there's with and without, and these are the main withouts. So the first one would be to remove pride, and that, again, very easier said than done. And again, it's something that we try and practice in everything, but it's particularly important in friendships because it is something that causes a lot of friendships to fall apart. Is that two people have an argument and, you know, neither one of them wants to apologize because they're too proud, and that's it. Friendship is going to end because of that. It's the downfall of many relationships and actually pulls a lot of people apart as a result. We see that in the story of, so if you look at the story of King Saul and David, when King Saul misses the mark and his kingdom is going to be, or his right to the throne is going to be given to David. Initially, he actually has David in his courts before he finds out, and he has him playing the harp for him. It actually soothes him to help him relieve the spirits that are tormenting him. Then once he finds out, so there was the potential there for a very good relationship to develop. But once he finds out that David is the next king after him, he all of a sudden gets filled with his pride, and all of a sudden he starts chasing after David and looking for ways to try and kill him. Because he just can't stand to bear the fact that somebody else will be king rather than his own heir, like somebody who's one of his children, right? So he gets very, very upset and he chases David to the end of the world, and we know how that ends. So he prevents a perfectly the potential of a very, very strong relationship there. And you see it as well in Joseph and the story of Joseph and his brothers. Once Jacob, his father, gives him the coat, what happens immediately after? His brothers see it, they get jealous, they take the coat and throw him in a pit, right? So that once again, their pride in saying, well, why didn't my dad give me a coat? Why did he give it to him? Why is he dad's favorite? So that eventually leads to the actions that they take. And we see it come out in all these examples as envy. It usually comes out as like a form of jealousy or envy, as like a form of like, I don't want them to prosper, or I don't want to see them happy. Yeah, and that's usually how pride will manifest in that relationship, is that one person in the friendship may be doing well and something good might happen, and the other person will say, rather than being happy for that person, they will actually start to think about themselves. What have I achieved? You know, why has this happened to them? What good did they do to deserve this? Why are they getting this? And so rather than being happy for them, they kind of actually go the opposite and be upset for them. Or they be upset for themselves, thinking about themselves, focusing on how nothing like this has happened to them. So that's something that we have to definitely try and remove from the relationship. Now, another big one is expectation. Learning to remove expectation. Again, this is working towards it, so it's not something that we can essentially perfect, and I don't think anyone has been able to perfect that. But it's the idea that if we give with an expect to receive, then we're not really giving. We're exchanging. Because if you sit there and wait for something in return, then it's the same thing with like God and our prayers. If we pray and we expect God to act, then it's like we're pretty much, it's like when we say that God is the vending machine, and we're pretty much pressing on the vending machine and hoping for something. It's the same thing with the friendships. If we give and we expect in return, then we're exchanging. And if we look at Christ as the ultimate example, as always, he never put that expectation on his disciples. He never appeared to them and said to them, hey, are you guys preaching the word? Are you sure you're preaching the right word? Are you sure you're making the most of everything that I've given you? He kind of just gave them as much love as he possibly can, and then left them. And they started acting and preaching out of their own desire, even to the point where most of them were martyred. And the thing about expectation is, who do you think is going to be affected when that expectation isn't met? Me, right? So if I set an expectation and that expectation isn't met, the only person that's going to be upset, or the only person that's going to affect, is me. I'm going to sit there and think to myself, oh, I went to church, I didn't go to church this week, and this person didn't message me, and we're supposed to be good friends. I'm so upset, right? So expectation's also something that it will definitely affect us personally, like it will affect myself personally more than anyone else. And the higher it is, obviously, the more it will affect. And the last one is to remove judgment. Again, very easier said than done. All of them are easier said than done. But this one is probably also one of the hardest, because it's kind of like, it just comes instinctively sometimes. And it's very important, especially when we're dealing with our friends who maybe aren't so close with the church, to remove judgment. And I think that's something that's a long-term thing, is that we can have relationships with friends and they can be formed a little bit around judgment, and we have to try and actively work to remove that from the relationship, to try and actually make sure that we are not putting that into the relationship and being friends with somebody and knowing and having them think that we judge them continuously. Especially if the friend is somebody who's not someone who's Christian, right? If it's someone that doesn't go to church and we're sitting there sort of like with our attitude and like sort of acting like they tend to think that we think that we're better than them, right? That's how they'll view it. And so I think it's hardest as well when we see someone doing something wrong. We see, especially like a good friend who's doing something wrong. How do we tell that friend without throwing judgment on them, right? And so it depends on our relationship with them and how we remove judgment from that friendship in the first place. I think if you look at a good example, if you take the example of Nathan that was mentioned last week, speaking to David. So Nathan, when he spoke to David to tell him this is the wrong that you've done, it was very nice if you read it. The way he actually words it, it's a very non-judgmental approach. He literally walks up to him and he gives him a story and he says, this is the story of someone who's done something wrong. And then when David asks, who is this person? He says, it's you. And that's it. And then he says, this is what's going to happen as a result. The people of Israel, 30,000 will die. Your violence will never leave your house and that kind of stuff. But he doesn't take it any further. He doesn't insert his own opinion into it. He doesn't come out and say, oh, you've done wrong, you're a terrible person, you're supposed to be king. You know, he keeps it very, very, very objective in a way. Okay, so those are the main things that I personally felt and I found as well that were good things that we can try to, that we look for in a good friend, or the way we can be a good friend to those around us. Things that we can do, things that we can practice to do, and things that we can practice to remove from ourselves in order to be able to be better friends to those around us and to further those relationships, yeah? So we'll go back to the Mentimeter, because I know you guys wrote down a lot of answers and I'm sure every single one of you is very eager to discuss it. So I just want to finish off by, this is one of the verses from, the end of the chapter. I found this very, very nice in terms of friendship and what it tells us about friendship, and very relevant to us. So this is the end of the book, end of the chapter of friendship in the book, The 5 Loves by C.S. Lewis. In friendship, we think we have chosen our peers. In reality, a few years difference in the dates of our births, a few more miles between certain houses, the choice of one university instead of another, posting to different regimens, the accident of a topic being raised or not raised at a first meeting, any of these chances might have kept us apart. But for a Christian, there are strictly speaking no chances. A secret master of the ceremonies has been at work. Christ, who said to the disciples, "You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you," can surely say to every group of Christian friends, "You have not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for one another." The friendship is not a reward for our discrimination and good taste in finding one another out. It is the instrument by which God reveals to each the beauties of all others. They are no greater than the beauties of 1,000 men. By friendship, God opens our eyes to them. They are, like all beauties, derived from him and then, in a good friendship, increased by him through the friendship itself, so that it is his instrument for creating as well as revealing. At this feast, it is he who has spread the board, and it is he who has chosen the guests. It is he, we may dare to hope, who sometimes does and always should preside. Let us not reckon with our host. So, I don't think I need to explain. It's pretty straightforward, right? I just found it very nice as a way to summarize this topic of friendship, that we can all view that as we are chosen for each other. Not always. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Mentimeter. And, okay, I'm going to refresh it because I think we've got more answers. Do you guys want to add to the Mentimeter, everyone who came afterwards? Do you want to add to it? Yeah. I'm all with it. 810. I forgot. Is it? What was the code, guys? I actually forgot. What is it? 17. What is it? Do you know it? Yeah, 8105. I remember ended 17. Yeah, Isaac. What's up? The website is mentimeter.com. Mentimeter.com. Everything's forward. Mentimeter.com.
I don't know what she's doing. She's in bed. 17578105. 1757 8105. I said the whole. Right. I'm gonna yell into it.
Oh my god. Seriously, she's like a row away from you. You that deaf?
Thanks, Amanda.
Does anyone like to add or maybe does anyone want to add or maybe dispute or huh? No, there isn't a like button, no. Does anyone want to add or speak about one of the ones that's up there that maybe wasn't spoken about? No, I didn't agree with that one. Someone wrote. I need to leave. Can I? Oh, nah. No, you can't delete stuff. Do you guys want to add any? Like loyalty, honesty, sound advice?
This smells like a water.
Huh? Is it? Uno puts it in his beard. Funny. Proactive.
Do you, so we got some good additions. Does anyone want to elaborate on anyone that they've mentioned up there that maybe wasn't spoken about or? Huh? Huh? I don't know. Just put it on the youth chat. 17578105. So, does anyone want to add anything to or discuss any of the ones that are up there? Doesn't talk a lot. Yeah. I know, someone wrote the Rich, that's my favorite one. Yeah. Huh? If you've added stuff that's irrelevant, no, I don't want to update.
Guy. They have to be a guy.
Is he most valuable in a true friend, in a good friend? Guy. Oh no, I'm not in this. No, I'm not in this here too. I'm not refreshing. I don't trust you guys.
Or go back. Thanks, Bassem. That was fun. If it's anything. Bantalon? Bassem.
Constructive criticism. Can whoever wrote constructive criticism please elaborate?
Who's constructive criticism?
Can whoever is constructive criticism please elaborate?
Does anyone else have any questions or comments or any points of discussion about being a real friend? Isaac? The one thing I noticed, like this was probably my takeaway, was the three natural types of love. They're almost passive, like it's almost something you just it's like a feeling. But like the agape love is almost, it's a bit more active. It's not something that just comes. It's like it's something that you actually need to, you know, they say like love is a decision, it's not a feeling. I think that's like what the agape, that was my takeaway anyway. Do we have anything else? Everyone's hungry and tired and it's Friday night. Abuna asked me to announce, but I don't have all the details, but this is something for you guys to keep an eye out on. There is a Lenten retreat coming up, supposedly. So I don't have details, but there's a Lenten retreat coming. Keep an eye open for the details. That's all the information I can give. If I give you any more information, it's probably incorrect. But yeah, just keep an eye out for the announcements. It's going to be in Thailand.